structural advantage is we are the multi-model orchestrator, right? So every 48 hours for a different subtype of task, there's a new best model for it. It's actually beyond the realm of like any one human's capability to like know what model to use for it, right? And so I think one thing people don't understand about computers is it's not just picking one model for an entire task. It's breaking a task down into many different components, running sub agents on them, and each of those agents use different models depending on the end-to-end objective of the task.
In this episode, I talked to Dmitry Shevelenko, Chief Business Officer at Perplexity, to discuss how the company evolved from an AI answer engine into a platform for AI agents. Dmitry explains why Perplexity is focused so intensely on accuracy, how AI is changing the nature of work, and why he believes the future belongs to small, highly leveraged teams. Perplexity is a company that I've been fascinated with for a while because it often pioneers things that other AI labs eventually adopt. With that in mind, I peppered Dmitry on a number of forward-looking topics such as the Tokenmaxxing backlash, hybrid and on-device AI, and hiring in the age of LLMs. And Dmitry shared some incredible advice on the 3 skills that will be the most durable in the AI era. If nothing else, you don't want to miss that part of the conversation. All right, so here it is, our conversation with Dmitry Shevelenko of Perplexity. Well, Dmitry, why don't you start by telling us, what Perplexity does and what your role is with the company?
Hey, great to be on. So I'm Dmitry Shevelenko. I'm the Chief Business Officer at Perplexity. For those that haven't yet experienced Perplexity, we build a AI digital coworker for people to be able to gain incredible leverage in their professional and personal pursuits. And this has been a gradual but accelerated evolution from being the first AI answer engine, which was focused on accuracy. And as model capabilities get more sophisticated, we take on more and more ambitious scope of what we can deliver for our users.
Very cool. And Dmitry, have you been in the same role your whole time with Perplexity?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I joined the company, we were around 20 employees, and we're now around 400 employees. So, while the role has been the same, the nature of what you do changes when you're living through hypergrowth. But my remit is to look after everything that isn't product and engineering at the company. So things like finance, legal, HR, all of our enterprise go-to-market efforts, marketing, communications. And so as I like to say, about half my day are things I know relatively well, and half my day I am deeply reliant on Perplexity to teach me how to do my job. So I'm in there in the weeds, dog fooding, just like everyone else, figuring out AI.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk a lot about the product side of what Perplexity does too, plenty. And so it makes sense, right? Being there early on, you've been there for the whole journey and been part of the way all of it has unfolded.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, the company's only 3.5 years old, and yet it feels like when I think back to my last professional adventure, that feels like more than a decade ago. So I'm sure we're all have a version of this feeling that the AI has accelerated just the sense of time, and a lot of things are happening in the world, and so it's a privilege to kind of be more on the inside of it, but we're all living through it together.
Yeah. What did you do before Perplexity, and how'd you end up at Perplexity?
Yeah, so the bulk of my career was at consumer internet companies. So I started at Facebook back when it was 80 million users, and was there from 80 to 800 million users. Got a taste of early hyper growth. Similarly was at Pulse News, which when early days was acquired by LinkedIn. Was a product manager at LinkedIn, and then joined the Uber team relatively early in their journey, and got to see that company be built in a very rapid manner. Then was a founder of a robotics startup, and learned firsthand the hardness of hardware, and the challenges of being a founder, and then got connected when we wound down that venture. Got connected to the Perplexity founders at the beginning of their journey, and I was already hopelessly addicted to the product, and it was a very natural kind of puzzle piece fitting in, and so I've been lucky to get to build alongside the Perplexity team since then.
Very good. I have so many questions that I have. I'm also a user of Perplexity. I've been a user for, a while, and use a lot of the different products, and would like to get into that. Have some specific questions for sure. But, one of the things I want to ask you about the other parts of your job. So you do some of the parts of running Perplexity that aren't, the things that are as forward facing. But are really important to building the business and making it sustainable and making it possible for the company to continue to innovate and all of that. What's that like? What are the things that you spend your day on? What's the things that you take most of your time to work on?
Yeah, so I deeply believe that we're now in an era where everyone, no matter how senior they are, should be spending most of their time as an IC. And
Okay.
so, like when it comes to, our most difficult, you know, legal and finance questions, or whether it comes to our most kind of complex partnerships or sales opportunities, I'm driving them kind of from the front, and
Okay.
I think that's important, even more important now, and I think that it's been important for certain leaders, in going back to time immemorial, but
IC is
it
individual contributor for those in the
yeah,
podcast
yeah,
who don't
yeah.
know what IC is. Yes. Keep going. Keep going.
But the reality is that the second you're too many steps removed from the actual work, your intuition around, wait, is the product we're building, is Perplexity Computer actually useful to people doing the work? You actually start losing your own sense of like, kind of meaningful ability to contribute to our understanding of what we should be building, right? So you have to be doing the work and using the tools to have the right sorts of intuitions and insights on where the gaps are, where the breakthroughs are, and kind of shaping the direction from there. Uh, I think the other piece that has been essential for Perplexity is execution velocity. We're known for shipping product. Uh, I view my job as largely being a sheriff of zero bureaucracy inside the company. And so,
Yeah.
we're kind of, by staying radically flat, we preserve the thing that gives us the best leverage, which is, as a new capability becomes possible, right? You have a model breakthrough. We always need to be first and best at understanding and bringing that to life for our customers and our users. Because even the model labs themselves, they bake a cake of a new model. They don't know what it tastes like until we all do, right? So you don't know what the new emergent possibilities are until you actually start using these things, and again having that firsthand intuition. So that's kind of how I approach the job. I think we try to have a very strong team of generalists. So as we need to kind of flex up in a certain function, we can bring people in and flex down as well, and keep things nimble. And that's worked well for us too.
Now it's time for a word from this week's sponsor, Microsoft. What does it take to go from an AI idea to your first paying customer? Most teams are experimenting with AI, but experimentation doesn't generate revenue. shipping does. Microsoft AI Envisioning Day is a free video series built for developers and software companies ready to turn ideas into real products. You'll learn how to take an AI idea to a working MVP that customers will pay for using practical patterns and guidance so that you can build something that actually generates revenue. No fluff, just clear frameworks and steps you can start using right away. If you're building with AI and want to start closing deals, not just shipping demos, this is how you get there. You can get started today at aka.ms/thedeepview. That's aka.ms/thedeepview. And we thank Microsoft for their support of the Deep View. And now, back to the show. When you think about, where your role goes in the future, clearly you've been in a lot of different kinds of companies. You've had very senior roles. You're in this very senior role. But we're at a moment now where the nature of work is changing, because of these tools, because of the tools that Perplexity is creating, because of other tools in the ecosystem. How do you think about what that looks for, how your role looks different, going forward, and for the kind of people that you're hiring? Are you hiring different because of the ways that work is changing?
Yeah, so I'll start with kind of my take on the Bezosian framing of like, tell me it's easier to predict what's going to stay the same versus what's going to change, right? So
Okay.
what I think will remain true for knowledge workers is three skills. One is you need to be very high agency, and that's kind of, when we talk about curiosity being a core value of the Perplexity product, it's also a core value of our culture, right? So, you got to have that fire and the desire to, ask probing new questions, and just kind of wake up every morning slightly dissatisfied. That I think is like the spark of agency, curiosity, creativity. That will always be essential. The models, no matter, like, I'm not a believer in, conscious AGI as something that we're on a trajectory towards. I think that's like a whole other philosophical realm that is really removed from, the technological path we're on. Ultimately, whatever AI is, it still needs humans to direct it towards productive purposes and giving it objectives. So being good at being curious, identifying problems, that's evergreen. I think the second skill is, how do you become really good at validating and checking AI for errors? And this is actually like a skill that translates, from general management. Like, you have a lot of people reporting to you. You can't go through and line by line see all of their work product, right? You have to develop good heuristics for, how am I going to know, did this person, make mistakes? Where could there be a fault in their reasoning and their process? And so developing mechanisms by which you're going to, as AI gets smarter, as you're entrusted to do more, it's even more important to know where it might be messing up. Because, the implications of not catching that earlier, become, more significant, right? So, what is your kind of error sampling and detection mechanism? And I look for people that, have a good intuition around that. I think the third piece is, this is kind of like this squishiest, but I think is important. Ultimately, humans are social creatures, and we care about, what other humans like. And so having good taste for what other people want, that doesn't go away, right? And that's why I think most, it wasn't surprising to me that Sora shut down. I don't think that was like purely, if Sora was crushing it, they wouldn't have shut it down, but it wasn't crushing it because people are curious about other people, and ultimately, the way AI will play in social media is, people that will be really good at using AI tools to create content, they will, there are paths for success for them. But the reason those people will be successful is not because of the AI tools. It is because of their brand and the spin they put on it. And so I think that kind of doesn't go away. So putting the three together, so high agency, curiosity, people that they're going to do well. People that are able to interrogate AI and find its mistakes, and kind of stay one step ahead of where the AI is. And then there's never going to be a shortage of demand for people who have good taste, who understand culture, and what drives other folks. Now, some of the implications here for the job market is those three things, they generally come from professional experience. And so I do think the entry level job market is going to be challenged. And I have three young daughters, 5, 8, and 11. So for me, this is very it's personal because it's not, too, I mean,
it's not theoretical.
It's like this is going to hit them. And what I believe the answer is actually entrepreneurship. So the way you develop taste, the way you develop intuition around where how do things break and where you shouldn't trust AI, the way you develop curiosity and agency is through building and experiencing failure. And in all the same ways in which it's hard to get an entry level job now as a young person, it became even more easy to build something on your own, right? And so I think that's kind of the corresponding enabler, and so I'm actually very optimistic about the economic prospects for young people. It needs to be a mindset shift where some of the traditional ways of getting your status badges will go away, and there'll probably be new forms of getting status and kind of credibility stamps. It could be how much products have you sold? How much? I mean, I'd rather it not be how many people follow you on TikTok, but
Yeah.
certainly that as a proxy for your ability to understand culture, that very well might end up being an important heuristic as well.
Sure. I have so many questions about Perplexity itself that I would love to ask you. I'll start with a few. Certainly, first I'll put on the table. I'm a user of three things regularly, which is Comet, Perplexity Comet, the web browser for Perplexity. I mean, I use the engine as well, especially to focus to search for more newsy or recent things. And then Perplexity Discover, which has actually become what I think of as probably the best news reader, news aggregator.
Oh, wow.
Pretty rapidly, which is interesting. And then of course
we might clip this and run some promotion on that endorsement. So thank you, Jason.
Yeah, look, it is, and I use a lot of them, and I find myself using that one more and more, and probably the most. Because of the fact that it's accurate, it understands what I want the best. I think the most rapidly, which is great. And then, of course, Perplexity Computer, personal computer, which is this the new AI agent that's pretty new. But before I do that, I want to ask about one thing that's core to where Perplexity began, which is this focus on accuracy. And there's studies, and you all have your own data and things like that, of that Perplexity has been able to do a better job than other chatbots at surfacing accurate answers and fewer hallucinations. Because I think most of our audience, knows, but I'll say it nevertheless. LLMs were not built for accuracy, right? They were not built for fact checking. Fact checking was not built into the LLMs to any of the chatbots, and so the hallucination problem, even in the best of them, right? There's you can count on at least about 10% hallucination rates. which is tough if you're somebody like me, a journalist, right? And you're searching for information, and like even 10% can't be inaccurate. Like we can't have anywhere close to 10% of what we do, be inaccurate. So we have to do other things to, if we're getting information, from LLMs because of that, from chatbots. But from the beginning, Perplexity had this focus on accuracy. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that, about the choice to do that, and how the company accomplished that, and where that still fits in sort of the set of priorities.
Yeah. I mean, it's still very much our bedrock, right? Because I would posit that you can't build useful AI if it's not accurate. And the DNA of this comes from the academic backgrounds of our founders.
Okay.
When you publish research papers, the currency of the realm is citations, right? So you actually cannot make a claim in a research paper that isn't either grounded in your original research, right? Like some data that you generated, or some previously published research that you're citing, right? And that is, everything kind of builds up from that. I think the expansion of accuracy. So we were the first to kind of marry search with LLMs because and again back when Perplexity was founded, like late 2022, early 2023, investors were actually like, why are you doing this? Like people love how LLMs can be wacky and funny. Like why are you making yours so boring and like grounded in facts? It's going to like kill engagement. And so we always believe that, again, useful AI needs to be accurate. You need to, earn the trust of your users. And that's been a foundational belief. And I think, as with many other things, like AI industry has kind of actually like moved our direction on this and kind of grounding matters. I would still say we are the only AI company, by virtue of being focused on the product layer, and having built our own search infrastructure, where accuracy is our number one priority. In fact, we every week have a company all hands, and the one section of it that is consistent is answer quality. So every week we report out, we'll have, different content, different weeks, but the one that's always the same is answer quality. So that's like really the bedrock of, how we see ourselves, how we want our users to see us. I think to broaden accuracy from just, the public web, I think it's useful to think about it as context now. So when somebody is running an agent, let's now think of an agent as a digital coworker. Just like when you join a new company, you go through onboarding, you're given access to tools, you're given a lot of information, you're given that context so you can be effective at your job. And a digital coworker is constrained by the context they have, and the access to internal knowledge, world knowledge, in order to be effective, right? So
Yeah.
I think like accuracy is now, I think, a subset of like what is all the relevant context that you can feed an orchestrator, so that it can work on your behalf.
So accuracy is one thing that, all of the LMs say they want to achieve it, right? All of the foundation labs, yeah. And so, but you all actually did achieve it. What were some of the ways that you were able to very early on create something where there was just a higher level of trust because of the focus on accuracy?
Yeah, so I think one is just, prioritization, right? We
Okay.
are our single largest dedicated engineering group is focused on search. And so
Okay.
every part of our search infrastructure, from how we do ranking, from how we build out snippets, it's all working backwards from, what ultimately will make the output as accurate as possible. I think another important pillar is you can only have trust and accuracy if you have transparency. And so citations, and building citations throughout the product was a very intentional design choice that we made
Sure.
early that we've stuck to. And this actually goes back to the second of the eternal knowledge worker skills, kind of error correction and kind of error testing. The reason we always link out to the sources is you shouldn't just blindly trust us either, right? You need to go and like read the we want people reading the source material, and ultimately, we are not a arbiter of truth. I don't think it's we try to obviously maximize the veracity of any information, but ultimately it's on the user to make their own independent judgments. And our job is to make that easy for them. So, transparency and ease of use and having the design really focus in on the citations was another, I think, essential part of how we deliver on that.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit about some other products. So Perplexity had this great journey, became very established, pretty quickly of having this answer engine, super accurate, easy to use, had very focused on more current events and all of that. And so one of the first products that I really got excited about, I know I already mentioned it, is Perplexity Discover. So I was already using the Perplexity search engine, but when you all launched Perplexity Discover, now not only did I go to Perplexity for information, but in a sense, like it surfaced the information for me, because it was already where I was going when I wanted to search a news story that happened last week. Right, I would use Perplexity. Perplexity is a great place to go to for current events or for more recent things. It's funny because even now, like, it's easy for people to forget that even a year or two ago, a lot of the search engines only had stuff from like a year or two ago, right? Like now all of them, again, sort of maybe the industry coming in your direction, but all of them now have stuff that's more current. But Perplexity Discover, and I'll say maybe around the same time, Perplexity Finance, you all started to say, okay, let's not just be a place where people come to ask questions or search, but let's be a place where, this was competing with like Yahoo Finance and with like Google Discover, where it's going to surface information for you. It's going to find information, learn about you and your context, and bring the information to you. How much was that a conscious choice, and what was the thinking behind, that direction?
Yeah. So one way we frame what we're all about is we serve the world's curiosity. And the reason we build things like Discover and Finance is actually in service of sparking the questions that you didn't know you had, right? So like the way I view success for Discover and Finance is not that you just come in and consume and don't do anything with that. Like success, and this is one of the key metrics we look at, is does somebody who read 5 Discover pages, are they then asking questions about the things they read about? Right. So the, that's why we have kind of, related follow-up questions, embedded into the product there as well. So it's not meant to be, while it is obviously, starts as a lean back experience, it is meant to, get you to want to ask questions, right? Like queries is still our, we don't really, focus on time spent as a metric. Like we're not building an ad business. For us, ultimately, like, can we, the business purpose behind those is to, by sharing something with you that is informing you, make you realize all the things you don't know about that you could be curious about.
Yeah, very good. I'm glad you mentioned the follow-up questions that are in there, because those are pretty good. Like it's sort of, these are natural next questions after you listen to us, or you read a story, or you go to a company on Perplexity finance. It has sort of some of these natural follow-up questions, which are pretty helpful. You also mentioned this aspect of not being an ad company and really, as you all have talked about the last few months, being more of an enterprise company, a company that helps businesses and professionals with their work every day. And there was a moment where Perplexity talked about ads, and that has changed, especially recently, to the what you talked about, which is the digital coworker part of the business. Talk a little bit about that thinking, that evolution of the company's thinking. Is that really paired to just the opportunity you saw and in the market, as well as the things that you were creating, like Perplexity Computer behind the scenes, even just since the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I think it's largely driven by just being blown away by the opportunity with Perplexity Computer. Yeah, we have a solopreneur just this week. I just got this update. Like one person running a one person company just asked to buy $100,000 worth of computer credits for the rest of the year. And so, we went from, a world where, the max value of a user in a given year, say they were a max subscriber was, $2,000. So they're paying us $200 a month, to now, $100,000. Right. So, that is, and again, this wasn't us even trying to sell this person this. They were like knocking on our
They were
door,
coming to
being
you.
like, yeah, like, hey, I just want to make sure, like, if I'm buying that much in computer credits, I know somebody there, right? So, what we see as really exciting is servicing, small teams, because the future of work, I think, will be smaller companies. The transition we're living through is historically the fundamental constraint on any organization was you just didn't have enough resources, right? You just didn't have enough people, you didn't have enough capital. In a Even with the compute costs as what they are now, the bottleneck is no longer resources, or capital. It's like, do you actually have alignment around what your objectives are? Do you have the right ideas on what you want to build? And do you have the will to make that happen? And that actually, dramatically relevels the playing field towards smaller organizations where you don't have bureaucracy. You can quickly make decisions. I mean, I'm certain that, Deep View would not have been possible. Feel free to disagree with me, but like, I think what you guys are doing would not have been possible a decade ago.
For
Uh,
sure. Even 5 years
because
ago.
yeah, so it's kind of, so we're living through a pretty profound reorganization of the types of work that can happen, the types of teams that can bring it to life, and a real, advantage towards the entrepreneur, and the builder. And so what we saw is actually our consumer users were from day one using Perplexity for work related queries. They were just using on their personal account, right? I mean, my favorite thing to do would be to walk into, when I would speak in front of folks that work at big banks, I would ask them, like, oh, how many of you have, the enterprise version of Perplexity? And, usually only maybe like 5 hands would go up. And then I'd ask, how many of you have, Perplexity on your phone and have in the last 48 hours, asked it a question related to your job? Every single hand goes up. And so we had this, and it's in our data. So 50% of our Enterprise Pro self-serve signups actually are accounts that were migrating from the consumer version, right? So we have this very natural flow. Getting back to, your kind of question, I think with ads, we did have a realization that no matter how good a job we did in having UI that delineates ad content from organic output, just having the ad there, when you have such a, editorially sensitive nature of output where it's no longer just links, but you actually have written text, it would start eroding user trust. And so we realized, like, if we're going to be the accurate AI company, there's no ad unit, there's no ad strategy that would help us that would enable us to preserve that pole position. That it was basically like we would lose that high ground, regardless of how we implemented it. Right? It's just an optics challenge that would be really hard to overcome. And so that decision was made independently of, like, holy shit, Perplexity Computer is blowing up, and, like,
Okay.
we should just be, full speed ahead on this. But they kind of map together, right? A lot of why, people, find value in Perplexity Computer is the accuracy, right? Is the trust that we're not, your digital coworker that you just hired is not secretly trying to, get you to buy, some insurance products. That is, I don't think we could have pulled both off.
All right. So let's talk about Perplexity Computer and Personal Computer, the two products, the two AI agent products that you all have released in 2026. And 2026 the AI agent has been the thing for 2026, and really since December, is really when agents burst on the scene. Really, Claude Code being the one that people started using it for more than just code. They started using it for other tasks, other kind of knowledge worker tasks. Then we saw, of course, the explosion of OpenClaw and it being able to be this open source project that spawned a bunch of other, claws and agents, free open source agents. But you all arrived at this moment, if I remember right, end of January. So clearly it wasn't just, OpenClaw did their thing and then you all sort of learned from it. You were working on this. I had heard something about the fact that maybe this even was an idea that arose out of CES, and then the team started working on it internally as a Slack bot, essentially, and
Yep.
then it very rapidly evolved into becoming the product. Correct me if any of that is off target.
No, yeah, that all maps. I mean, I think the reason we were able to execute quickly on it is it built on top of a lot of technology we already created, right? So,
Okay.
for example, Comment, which it sounds like you use,
Yep.
a lot of the browsing capabilities in computer work so well because of all the work we did in Comment. Now with
Okay.
Comment, you have client side and server side browsing. With computer, it's mostly server side, but actually, I sounds like you potentially use computer and comma as well, and, like, the handoffs there can be really powerful for certain type of tasks where the server side browsing will, for a variety of reasons, not be as effective. So
So you don't need a plug-in or anything. Other products need a plug-in in a browser to make that work, and because you already had a browser,
and we had search, right? So we had search, we had the browser, which is really the first class of web agent, right? So you can think of what Comment was. That was the first web agent, and then when the magic of December of last year was you finally had frontier models that could plan over a long enough time horizon where you could go from a one-off question answer to actually a task that runs over time, right?
Okay.
And a set of repeatable tasks that starts to take the form of a digital coworker, right? And so that's the trajectory we're on. And so I would kind of offer, like, three axes of, like, where we are and where we're going that will kind of
Okay.
just keep getting better over time. So one axis is a simple way to think about it is, when will you be able to do all of your work just from your phone, right? And so that's actually personal computer, right? So when you have all your files, all your system controls kind of mapped, and in a secure way, you can access that from anywhere and do any kind of computation with it. It literally does not matter where you are in the world, right? And you can be doing work, right? And Perplexity's one of our strengths is UI, and so we actually see incredible adoption of computer on mobile devices, and it can be really, really powerful there. So do all your work from your phone. The second, and this is one we haven't talked much about yet, but what we're really excited about um, is, I think, the antidote to token maxing is actually a hybrid compute,
Okay.
where we're going to be spending a lot of time thinking about what are the models that can run locally, right? And
Yes.
that obviously will have cost implications, but also privacy ones, right? Where there's certain
Yes.
types of we launched a really cool tax feature, and a lot of people use it, and also some people gave us feedback like, I love you, Perplexity, but ain't no way am I just like
Put my
uploading
tax. Yeah.
my tax stuff into the cloud, and I'm not like part of that is like a early 90s, like, ain't no way I'm putting my credit card on a website, but I
Sure.
get it, right? And
Sure. Yeah.
so I think hybrid compute is going to be a story to watch the rest of the year, and I think that's going to broaden the set of ambitious use cases, and also get us outside of some of these early, um, you know, overly early kind of cost concerns
Yes.
and
Yes.
capacity concerns. So that's one to watch. And then the third is, it's kind of what I said. Like in December, we finally got to the point of like a just long enough time horizon of planning, but it can be much longer, right? Like right now, we're
Yeah.
maybe like an agent can plan a week ahead. How do we get it to do it 6 months ahead and to be self improving, right? So that it is not just like you know what people love about computer, and people also say this about Claude Code for engineering, is like it does not give up,
Yeah.
and but it sometimes doesn't give up and is just like still like running in a loop,
It'll
where it
burn a
doesn't
bunch
give
of
up,
tokens.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and burning tokens, and that's not particularly useful. So the paradigm that we're very excited about is, how do you break out of those loops and actually learn from where you get stuck, and rather than just like trying something different, actually learning from whatever you're kind of running into. And so those are the three trajectories that we're in a really strong position, and at the base of them is something we haven't talked about, which is like our structural advantage is we are the multi-model orchestrator,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
every 48 hours for a different subtype of task, there's a new best model for it.
Sure.
And it's actually beyond the realm of like, any one human's capability to like know what is for again each subtype of subtask, like what model to use for it, right? And so
Yeah.
I think one thing people don't understand about computers, it's not just picking one model for an entire task. It's breaking a task down into many different components, running sub agents on them, and each of those agents use different models depending on the end-to-end objective of the task.
So one might be using a Claude model, one might be using an OpenAI model, one might be using an open source model, NVIDIA Nematron or
Yep.
GPTOSS or a Chinese model, any of those.
Well, so my kind of fun example of this is whenever I'm like traveling with my kids, which isn't that often because the job is pretty demanding, but I try to like make it intellectually interesting for them, as I'll use computer to generate personalized podcasts for them. And like prompt it like, okay, make this interesting for a 6-year-old, and we'll tell it about what we're going to be seeing, and kind of we'll let it run from there. And just for that one very simple task, it will use Opus for the high level planning. It
Okay.
will use Grok for the research because it's actually a fast researcher. It will use GPT as the writer because GPT is actually pretty good at generating text. Gemini to create the audio file, It will then use Sonnet to write the Python code to stitch together the audio files and like add musical effects, and then do all of the technical validation that it's a cohesive file. So that's where it does the coding. And that's just one Simple Kids podcast, right? We just use
Yeah.
5, 6 different models, and so that is I think the feeling that no matter what you're doing, you want the optimal set of intelligence that exists in the world working on your behalf. We think is really powerful, and obviously hybrid compute like plays into this because that you're adding in the layer of cost control and privacy control.
Yeah. Dmitry, I'm so glad you mentioned hybrid compute. I want to come back to a bigger question on compute because you manage resources at a company where compute is getting more expensive and more, the demand for it is got to be getting really high with the agent work. So we'll get to that in a second. But, hybrid compute, I'm working on this story right now because I suspect in the second half of the year, hybrid compute is going to get really important because a lot of people are spending a lot of time. Tokenmaxxing is all well and good until you start running out of compute and you start running out of money. And so, and like you said, there are also the privacy and even performance implications you get when you can run some of the things locally. And so I have this story I'm working on about using some of the things like Codex and Claude Code running on local models like Olama, using hardware like the new, MacBook Pro M5 Max, you can run a pretty big model. It used to be you had to run these like 2 billion, 4 billion parameter models if you're running them locally. But now you can run up to 70 billion parameter models locally on a laptop, which is kind of mind blowing. Does Perplexity Computer already do that? Forgive my ignorance on this. This personal computer, I should say. Does it already let you run on local models, or is that an update that's coming later in the year?
I can't announce anything officially, but I wouldn't be talking about hybrid compute if we weren't very focused on this. And
Okay.
I'll just say like Computex will have some really, which is in early June
Yeah.
in Taiwan. There'll be some really fun announcements coming there.
Oh, good. Tell your team to keep me in the loop on that because we're writing a lot about this hybrid compute. And our theory is that in the second half of the year, hybrid gets a lot more important because you can save time, performance, you can do it offline, privacy, all of those things. So big trend. It's great to hear that you all are working on that and it's a priority. All right, let me ask the bigger question then. As somebody who manages a lot of the resources, at Perplexity, the compute issue, all of a sudden, I have to imagine your demand for compute has increased significantly because of, computer. You have people buying $100,000 worth of credits, to run their agents. What is that like for you all? How is your access to compute? How are you thinking about the ways to, manage those costs? But as I understand it, for most companies right now, it's not even a matter of cost. Like even if you had all the money in the world, there's only so much compute that you can get. So how do you all continue to be able to scale up in the midst of what we have as a kind of computing crisis or, shortage that we're in currently?
Yeah, it's I mean, I think the strategy is all of the above, right? Like, I
Okay.
think like there's not going to be like a singular silver bullet that gets you through it. Um, I think also if you just look at the history of models over the last few years, the pattern is clear that like you'll have a powerful new model come out, and then 6 months later you'll have the same power but like 4 times more efficient, right? So I think it's not you have to in some ways it is more of a sure thing that the models we have get more token efficient than it is that we keep getting new intelligence or scaling breakthroughs, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a safe thing to bank on. Um, I would also say that while compute is very much in demand, I'm not going to deny that. If you look at the incentives of pretty much every player in the AI space, uh, everybody wins by saying compute is constrained. Like nobody is like
Fair. It's fair.
nobody is like going to make more money saying like, oh, like
We've
I
got
actually
plenty.
have I've got these like empty data racks and data center racks and like I don't know what to do with them. So there is a um, I think regardless of the reality on the ground, and right now there is like a peak, I would say a peak surge in demand. I think
Okay.
that's real.
Okay.
But like, listen, Elon himself, was not able to. He had all these data centers. He actually wasn't able to like make good use of them, which is why he licensed them to other companies, right?
Sure.
So
Sure.
it's not, and I think you will have, because things change so fast, uh, and because AI accelerates everything, it will also accelerate the development of these local models, right? That potentially could take a lot of you know server compute needs, offline.
Thank you for being the first person that poo-pooed the computing compute crisis on this podcast, because it actually gets to this
Well, I'm not.
question
I'm
that
not. I want to be clear. I'm not like poo pooing it. I'm just saying don't trust what, like, it's one of these things where structurally, uh everyone, like, even people who are against the spread of compute are exaggerating it, right? Like when like, I mean, this like fake water crisis, where, like, if we want to talk about water, let's talk about almonds in California before we talk about data centers. So there's a lot of desire to like hype this thing up in terms of a shortage, and there is some shortage for real, but we should be wary of the structural incentives.
Yeah, very good. And wanted to ask you about a little bit, because you all do this too. One of the things that I've been seeing is there are some progress being made on things like using like small language models, domain specific models, even task specific models now, which can run faster, much cheaper, almost at near zero cost, as well. And that being like, we don't have to use a huge model for every problem. It's like using a chainsaw to cut down a daisy, in some cases. And so that is part of the solution as well, as I understand it. Are you all already seeing that, of using different models? Clearly, because you
With the
are an
orchestrator, yeah.
orchestrator of models,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been part of our DNA, is like, ultimately, I think we've lost sight of how important latency is as a feature.
Yep.
And so, it's like we got, I think in the last 6 months, there's probably been a over focus on raw intelligence, and, people just wanting like the most like token heavy model just because they can. And ultimately, like, less of a, I mean, that's why one of the fun features of Perplexity is actually Model Council, where you see the
Yeah.
output from many different models running in parallel, and it helps you develop an intuition of like, like, are they, where are they different? Where do they specialize? Where are their similarities? But we expect specialization to accelerate, especially
Okay.
with different mid training and post training work done on open source models, and so advantage to the orchestrator there.
Very good. Last question on Perplexity products. Well, Perplexity, you have some of your own models already, but you're not really a frontier lab. You really are working on more on the orchestration level, on the level of the application level, which we might call it, or what we used to call it. Will Perplexity ever, does Perplexity have any desire to sort of be more of a frontier lab?
We don't have any plans to invest in pre-training, but we are, what you were saying about, post training for specialized tasks.
Yeah.
We see a lot of value in that. We think a lot of um, the kind of trace data that we get through usage of the product is very valuable for training, and so there is, we have, AI PhDs as our founders, and so we definitely do some very serious AI work, and we publish research on it. Pre-training is not an area of investment, but something I say often is that the thing I'm most confident in my role is that 6 months from now I'm going to have a top three priority that today I don't know what it is. And I say that like with a smile on my face, but with genuine belief that that is like the
Sure.
reality, and it's a lesson that's proven true many times over.
Very good. Well, Dmitry, I always end with the same two questions to everybody, on this podcast. And the first one is, in this AI age, one of the things that is true is now everybody doesn't have enough time. And especially leaders now, their role is changing. And they are even more thinking about, how do I get the most leverage for my time? Or in other words, how do I, for some of our audience who aren't familiar with the term leverage, it is, how do we maximize and make sure I'm using my time for the best and most valuable things? How do you think about that? What's your best tip for people today, for other leaders today, in making sure they're maximizing their time?
Yeah, I mean, a very personal answer is I've really invested in personal health and fitness over the last 6 months more than any other time in my life. And part of that is like the space is so competitive, so dynamic every day. Even if you're on top of Perplexity Discover news, there's so much happening that if you are not like, so I would say like, investing in your own AI model that sits atop your body, and all the component parts of it is really important right now, because there's compounding benefits from being having tight feedback and decision loops right now.
Very good. How about, what's the AI tool, that you're using right now, maybe that surprised you, or that's made a really big impact for you, that maybe, people haven't heard of, that you'd recommend, our audience out there gives a try?
I mean, I use Perplexity Computer for everything, and whatever it can't do, I try to have it build an app to have it make those things. So I'm
Okay.
the ultimate dog fooder of it. I use it. I think as I mentioned, the young daughters. A really fun project I'm working on with my 11-year-old is she is using Perplexity Computer to launch a kids sports drink that is going to be loaded with protein, no sugar, along with the latest health trends. But just kind of seeing the product through the eyes of a young person with no like knowledge of the world of work or business, and seeing what she can do with it and how she asks questions has been really invaluable.
Very cool. Dmitry, thanks so much for your time. Yeah, good luck to Perplexity on the rest of 2026. What a journey it's been so far, and yeah, lots of other exciting stuff ahead.
Thanks so much. Love the conversation. Talk soon.